This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi. Baruch Haba, welcome back. Hope everyone had a good Yom Tov. Parshas Noach. We're going to talk today about Migdal Bavel, the Tower of Babel. What exactly was that? What were they trying to accomplish? The pasuk says, at the end of Noach, Parak Yud Aleph, pasuk Daled, Vayomru Hava Nivna Lanu Ir. Come, let's build a city, Migdal, and a tower. So in other words, they didn't just want to build a tower, they wanted to build a city as well. So what was the intention of building the city? They didn't have enough cities. They certainly had cities before. V'rosh b'shamayim, the top of the tower will be in the heavens. V'nasa lanu shem, we'll make a name for ourselves. Panofutz al pnei kol haaretz, lest we be scattered throughout the world. Says Rashi. Rashi's going on pasuk Aleph. Pasuk Aleph says, "Hayu kol haaretz safa echas udvarim achadim." What does it mean, dvarim achadim? The whole world were dvarim achadim. Very unusual expression. What does it mean they were dvarim achadim? Says Rashi, dvarim achadim means there was a certain unity they had. Ba'u be'itza achas. They came with one definitive plan. Va'amru, and they said like this: who does God think He is, that He puts us down here and He gets the whole upper worlds for Himself? Here, we're all down here, we have to share it, and He's all by Himself up there. It's not fair. It's not fair that who does He think He is to select the upper spheres? Let's go up to the heavens. Let's wage war with Him. Now, is that a very satisfying explanation? They're going to wage war with God? What exactly are they going to do? They're going to build a tower, climb up to the heavens. What are they going to use? A sword? They can use. How are they going to fight with God? With what? What exactly does this mean? And then Rashi then says another pshat. Davar acher. Al yechidoi shalaylam. The words dvarim achadim don't mean one definitive plan, but dvarim achadim, matters about the echad, regarding God. Another pshat Rashi says, Davar acher, dvarim achadim. Amru, they said, achas li elef v'tafresh nun vav shanim. Once every 1,656 years, harakia mismaitet, the heavens collapse, kishem sha'as b'mei hamabel, like it happened in the times of the Mabel. In other words, they attributed the Mabel to natural causes. They didn't say God brought the Mabel. They said the heavens collapsed every 1,656 years. The ceiling needs to be repaired. We have to plaster the ceiling, like we learned in Masechta Midos. You got to plaster the ceiling of the Beis Hamikdash. You got to plaster the ceiling of the wall of the world every so often. So therefore, Bayu v'nasaloi smuchais. Let's make a pillar. This way, we make a big pillar. The heavens won't collapse.
How many years is after the
Exactly how many years? I don't have on. But they said the Mabel happened in the year 1656. Abraham, we know, was born in 1948. So somewhere in between, right? Rashi says exactly with the age of Avar. But okay. But all of these explanations, Rabbi, are very hard to understand. That they were going to fight against Ribbon Shalom, that they wanted to make pillars to hold up the sky. I mean, everybody knows that you could build the strongest pillars in the world. The heavens are not a tangible thing they can hold up with pillars. And the Ramban, in fact, asks, look at number 3, Hinei kol Parsha hazu eina lefi havanasenu. This whole Parsha is not the way we understand. You think they were a bunch of fools? Anyone who explains this episode simply kvar batal daitam, they don't know what they're talking about. So anybody who thinks, they wanted to make pillars, supports, they were trying to fight against Hashem, they don't know what they're talking about. Okay, so we're going to try to analyze some very interesting explanations. What exactly were these people trying to accomplish? We begin with Rabbeinu Bechaye. Now, Rabbeinu Bechaye, if you look in his introduction, by the way, Rabbeinu Bechaye is a very important Parish on Chumash. Chassam Sofer writes in the introduction to the Torah's Moshe that for 40 years he learned Rabbeinu Bechaye on the Parsha every single Friday night for 40 years. That was the Parish he learned, and every year he found new insight in the commentary of Rabbeinu Bechaye. Rabbeinu Bechaye has basically 4 levels of explanation of the Chumash. He has Derech HaPshat. Okay, that's a simple interpretation. He has Derech HaDrash, where he quotes Midrashim. And the Ibn Ezra challenges this approach, the Derech HaDrash. Ibn Ezra writes, what do we need Rabbeinu Bechaya for? It's already in the Medrash Rabbah, it's already in the Medrash Tanchuma. I need Rabbeinu Bechaya to write it again. It's already printed. What is it, a likud? It's already written in Medrash Rabbah. I need Rabbeinu Bechaya to come and write the exact same words over, or for that matter, Rashi. All of these things that Rashi says, Bereshis Rabbah, is already in the Bereshis Rabbah. So Ibn Ezra says, why do we need a commentary to come and write the words of Rashi over? To which Rabbeinu Bechaya sort of addresses this question, and he says that on Shabbos afternoon, when people come to shul, and they're tired, and they're weary, and they need to be revived, there's no better way to revive them than to quote them over the words of the Medrash. So in other words, what Rabbeinu Bechaya is saying is, he's doing it for practical purposes. Got to keep the people up. You have to sort of breathe life into the people. That was the Derech HaDrash. To reinvigorate them, that's right. And then Rabbeinu Bechaya has something called Derech HaSeichel. What's Derech HaSeichel? Derech HaSeichel is showing how all the disciplines emanate from the Torah. How all science, biology, chemistry, physics comes out from the Torah. And anytime Rabbeinu Bechaya is able to explain portions of the Torah scientifically, showing how the science really emanates from the Torah, that's what he does. That is the Derech HaSeichel. And the fourth level of Pshat, he has something called Derech HaEmes, which is Api Kabbalah, and he says that's based on the teachings of the Ramban. Okay, so here we have a scientific explanation for Migdal Bavel. You ready? Derech HaSeichel. The explanation of the intellect. V'nasa lanu shem. What does it mean? Let's make a name for ourselves. Hayu anshe haflaga risham. They were wicked, but they were also smart. Maskilim b'chal chachma. They had understanding of all wisdom. Va'asu ha'ir. They made the city. V'hamigdal and the tower. Kedei lihinatzel mehamabel shal ish. To save themselves from a mabel of fire. Presumably, they knew God promised that He wouldn't destroy the world with water. So they figured, what's next? Hashem will send down, tremendous fire to the world. So how is by making a tower, how are they going to save themselves from fire? They already saw the world go lost through the mabel of water. Pachadu lanafsham. They were afraid for their lives. And they needed to make a place that Hashem would bring a mabel of fire and burn the world, that they would be saved, and the fire would not approach their boundary. When it says, when Chazal say they wanted to wage war with God, you know what it means to wage war with God? To come up with a scientific means to be able to save themselves from the Gzeira min HaShamayim. In other words, if a person takes human steps to go against Hashem's Gzeira, especially if the Gzeira is a punishment for their Chatoim, that's a war with God. Now look what he writes. Koloimar, leheyazer, to try to take help im hakoiches ha'elyonim, with the forces on high, behefech ritzani yisbarach. Now look what he writes. Belikshar chelek mi yisoid ha'esh, to try to cling on to the element of fire, shelo yuchal lehiskarev el ha'ir, so that the fire of God cannot approach the city. You know what this is? Kishem shematzinu af b'doreinu zeh. Good old Benjamin Franklin, like we find in our own generation. K'tzas hachachamim sheyoidim likshar chelek echa min habarak. They know how to attract part of lightning. Shelo yavai ela b'gvul yadua. That the lightning should come only to a designated area. So what were they making? Lightning tower. Migdal Bavel was the first lightning tower.
That was before Benjamin Franklin.
That was before Benjamin Franklin, right? So not only do we not... Now there are a lot of things about Franklin that we're better off not knowing. And we can't even credit him with discovering the lightning rod, right? Because this has been discovered a long time before. Okay. So this is very interesting next one. Rabbeinu Bechaya says, Al derech HaSeichel, what were they doing? They were constructing some type of scientific watt tower, observatory, lightning rod, so that when the fire comes down from heaven, it would be attracted to this building and they would be saved. Yeah.
Hashem's promise that He won't destroy the world by Nabu was public knowledge.
Yeah.
Well, yes, Noah came 1,000 years later. I mean, what do you mean years? Who knew that?
Noach was a prophet, and perhaps now Rabbi Mechai doesn't say explicitly that they knew that, but even if they didn't know that, they were concerned lest God bring this fire upon them, and this is what they made.
What was the difference in years between the Dor Mabul and the Dor Flagal?
How many years?
Yeah.
Yes, I said I don't have the exact figure, but okay.
How
Now,
does this prevent the fire from hitting this building? Look at the World Trade Center; it just crumbled from the fire. So you have a big tower. Eventually, it could burn.
how does a lightning rod work?
No, it's grounding the electricity.
It takes it, diverts it, and it goes into the earth. The earth is able to absorb the blow of it.
But it would, that'll be for lightning, but not for matches and fire and oil. I don't know.
This is again. They were afraid a fire would come down from heaven, and this would be a way to attract it and to prevent it. Yeah.
You'd rather do could be some kind of explanation, some kind of tshuva that they were trying to do?
Tshuva? Yeah. No, this was no tshuva. This was a chait. They knew Hashem was angry at them. They knew Hashem was going to punish them.
How could they fight with the Kadosh Baruch Hu and change zera? It sounds like that's
no, that's a correct. That's a good way of changing the gzera. That's not a fight. Hashem wants us to do tshuva. Here, they wanted to continue their behavior and avoid the punishment. So that was what we call milchama. That's how we understand milchama. Okay, yeah. What do we need the city for? Apparently, then maybe the city needed to be the foundation for such a tower. Okay, still, it's not. Fully understandable. Okay, then you have the famous pshat of Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz. Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz learns that the ear and the migdal was a launching pad. What was it a launching pad for? It was a launching pad for a rocket ship. And what would they want to do in the rocket ship? They were going to go to the moon, right? So you thought, right? Armstrong thought he was going to be the first person. These Babylonians, they were ahead of the Russians. You thought the Cold War was who's going to get to this is the earliest competition. Who's going to get to the moon first? Says the Rebbe, Rabbi Yonasan. Rabbi Yonasan, Eibeshitz, specific Tiferes Yonasan, Roya, B'migdal, Kan Uvasis. This was the base. L'chli neshek, for some type of weapon. Shebezrasa yisyashiv ha'adam ala yerech. They understood once you get out of orbit, so then, gravity is working on your side. Right? V'yimtza sham chasos mibnei pigei teva. Okay. That's the pshat of Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz. In other words, of course they knew they're not going to keep on piling the bricks higher and higher and higher until they get to God. But, they understood once you get beyond the orbit, so then you have gravity taking you the other way. Okay. The main explanation we'd like to focus on today is the pshat of the Nachlas Yaakov, the author of the Nesivos HaMishpat. He has an amazing explanation, and this is a theme that he uses often in Tanakh. Okay, and he quotes the Alshach.
When was he? What year did he?
The Nesivos HaMishpat was a contemporary, like Tzais HaChoshen, and he was the early Achronim. Okay?
And Rabbi Mechai is the grandmother?
Rabbi Mechai is the students of the Ramban, one of the Rishonim. Okay. So says the Nachlas Yaakov, says the Nesivos. Nivne lanu ir. Ayin ba'alshach, dvarav v'kitzer, uv'shino lashon. Look in the Alshach. If you want to get a more fuller picture for this explanation, look in the words of the Alshach, because he's bringing them down very concisely. Uvashino lashon ki dvarav hein emes amita. This is absolute truth. And then he says like this. Skip 2 lines. V'yodua ki zeh lu'umas zeh asa elikim. Everybody knows in this world there's balance. There's kedusha. There's tumah. There's opportunities to do good, there's equal opportunity to do bad. If not, there'd be no room for free choice. If on every block all you had was shuls and shiurim and magidei shiurim pulling you to learn, and there was nothing pulling you in the other direction, there would be no point in living. So that's why you have shuls, and right down there you have, a makom atunaf, right here. Why? It's zeh lu'umah zeh asa elokim. God made it an equal level playing field. As many opportunities that there are to do good, the more shiurim there are, the more text messages you get, the more emails you get, the more things pulling you away. It used to be, you wake up in the morning, how many shiurim could you go to? Now, you have millions of opportunities to go to shiurim. Every sefer is available in English. Anything. Kamat, every sefer is translated. You could find somewhere a very thorough shiur on any topic you want. But, the same way there are many opportunities to good, the distractions are also just as many. Okay, that's the concept. Zel le'uma zeh asalikim. Says the Nesivos, V'hinei, k'moi sheyesh ba'aretz makom l'hashras kedusha. Just like we know that in this world there is a designated place for Hashem to reside, Hashchina. Where is that? What's the name of the city? Yerushalayim. Right? You ever hear that name? Yerushalayim. Umaymer David, like David said, Ad Emtza Makom Hashem. We need to find a place for Hashem. What do you mean we have to find a place for Hashem? Malay kol haaretz kavaydai. No. Even though Malay kol haaretz kavaydai, there is a designated place which is more suitable for Hashem's Shechina. Same way, you have something called Eretz Yisrael, and you have something called Yerushalayim, and you have something called the Beis HaMikdash. There must be somewhere in this world that is designated for Tumah, where all the forces of Tumah could be concentrated and could join together and could be more powerful. There has to be a city, because if there's Yerushalayim, there has to be a corresponding city. Yekach yesh mekayimos hamuchanim lahashras hatumah. The same way you need to prepare Yerushalayim through, right? You can't just decide, okay, a Yerushalayim is a place of Kedusha. You have to prepare it. David had to buy it. He had to lay the foundation. He had to make the ritzvah. So, Ubeis HaMikdash, Shehei Muchanim Neged Shar Shemayim, the same way the Beis HaMikdash is aligned with the gateways of heaven, Lahashras Kedusha, Kamoichein Chas V'Shalom, Tzarech Lahashras Tumah. If you want to make a city designated for Tumah, you have to prepare that city. You have to designate that city. You have to build that city. Lekach Tzrichin Livnois Ir Umigdal, that is why they needed to make a city and a tower. Lahamshich Shefa Mishar HaTumah. The same way, if you go to Yerushalayim today, there's a gateway in the Shemayim, right opposite Yerushalayim, that from there all the tefillos go up and all the shefa comes down. There is somewhere in this world where in Shemayim, all the tumah is pouring down from that place. And if you're able to build a city, Hineni Muchan, Umazuman, Livnois, Ir Shel Tumah, then you could have all the tumah from the Shar HaTumah come down and pour into that makkah. Says the Nesivos, everybody knows in the place of Tumah, Kedusha runs away. Because through sin, the Shechina goes away, goes up to the 7th level.
I thought the Shechina overcame the Tumah.
No, the Shechina only comes to specific places, right? You have 9 Jews in the shul, Shechina hasn't come yet. Right? So he says, the kavana of these people was to cause as much tumah as possible to come to this place. And they had great kavanos, they had great intentions. The same way we're going to see when Betzalel made the Mishkan, he had to know exactly how Hashem created Shamayim Ba'aretz. The people who built the Migdal also knew different shemais to be able to attract the Tumah. Ir Keneged Yerushalayim Umigdal Neged Beis HaMikdash. Says in the Sivs, you know what this Ir was? The same way you have a city designated for Kedusha, there is no holier place in the world. You can only eat Kachem Kalim in Yerushalayim, you can only Meiser Sheni in Yerushalayim. It has Kedusha. You don't say Tachnon, right? You don't need to say for Torah in Yerushalayim because it's always Lefnei Hashem. The same way there's a city of Kedusha, there's a city of Tumah. The purpose of building the Ir, they wanted to have a city where all Tumah in the world would concentrate. And what was the Migdal? The Migdal was corresponding to the Beis HaMikdash. It was the place of concentrated Tumah. And this is what it means, V'zeh Amru Na'asa Lanu Shem, because the Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim says the word shame refers to something's essence and something's reality. So they said, let's give ourselves something substantial. Let's give ourselves an identity of Tumah. How? By building this city. It's very interesting. The Nesivos uses this concept in Megillas Esther to explain something which is very difficult. We know that Haman, the purpose of the city was, in this city, all the Tumah will concentrate, all the Tumah will conglomerate. This is a place where all Kedusha will depart. In other words, they were creating a corresponding power to Kedusha. What does it mean? They were going to go up to the heavens. They were going to take down from the same way there's a Shar HaShamayim, from which Kedusha descends, where the Shechina is, where our Tfilos go up. There is a corresponding Kochos HaTumah, with which they were going to build the city. They were going to build a city of Tumah. That's what their kavanah was.
Where is this city today?
Where is the city today?
Yeah.
I don't know. You might be living in it. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Las Vegas.
I don't know where the city is.
Have to do a search
It's a good one.
on Google.
It's hard to know. I don't know. But let's see what he says. He says like this. So we know that the Gemara tells us in Masechet Megillah on Daf Tezayin that Haman paid how much money to be able to destroy Klal Yisrael? Asaras, Alafim, Kikar, Kesef. Tosfos makes a cheshbon. That's Machzis HaShekel Keneged all 600,000 Jews. To which the Rebbeinu Shalom tells Haman, what do you think you're doing? Klal Yisrael already gave the Machzis HaShekel. So who do you think you are by giving Machzis HaShekel to be able to destroy Klal Yisrael? Very mysterious conversation over here. Somehow Haman thought by taking a half a shekel corresponding to every Jew, he would be able to destroy Klal Yisrael. And Hashem says, don't worry, the Jews already gave Machzis HaShekel to the Mishkan. What does the fact that we gave a Machzis HaShekel to the Mishkan have to do? How would that counteract Haman giving the equivalent Machzis HaShekel corresponding to every Jew? And then furthermore we find that it says by Machzis HaShekel, Zeh Yitnu, Zeh. One of the three things Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't comprehend was the Machzis HaShekel. He couldn't comprehend the Menorah. He couldn't comprehend Chidush HaLevana. And he couldn't comprehend the Machzis HaShekel. So the Menorah, I get it. He can't understand it. It's a very ornate kli, very hard to carve out. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know how to do it. The Chidush HaLevana is also very complicated, exactly how big the Levana has to be. But what's the problem with the Machzis HaShekel? Where do you think the Jews got the Machzis HaShekel from? Moshe Rabbeinu took a chisel and he carved out a Machzis HaShekel. They got it from their purse. They got it from their wallet. What's the problem? What was Moshe's kasha with the Machzis HaShekel? The Jew will take out the Machzis HaShekel and he'll give it and put it in the pushka. What's Moshe's kasha? What doesn't he understand about the Machzis HaShekel? What doesn't Moshe know? Moshe doesn't know what a dollar is. I'll show him what a dollar is. Right? Have a dollar in my wallet. What doesn't he get? He doesn't have to make the dollar. So it says in the Sivos, an unbelievable thing. He says that whenever we do a mitzvah, you blow shofar. What are you accomplishing by blowing shofar? What are you accomplishing by taking a lulav and esrog? So he says the following idea. That we know that often when Hashem gives prophecy to a Navi, He tells a Navi, do a payal dimyon, do a physical action to make the nevuah come true. For instance, Yirmiyah was commanded, take a rock, throw it into the sea, and as the rock sinks in the sea, you say, Kacha tishka Bavel. As the rock is sinking, Bavel will sink. Why does Yirmiyah have to do that? Hashem told him Bavel will sink. Why does he have to throw the rock into the sea? The answer is, for a nebulous prophecy to come to fruition, you have to do a tangible action to bring it into the world of reality. That's the principle of the Ramban. That's why throughout Bereshis you have Ma'isa Avos Siman Labanim. When Avraham Avinu goes down to Mitzrayim, Klal Yisrael would go down to Mitzrayim. Avraham Avinu has famine, Klal Yisrael will have famine. Everything that happened to the Avos will happen to Klal Yisrael. Why couldn't Hashem just make it happen to Klal Yisrael? Why did the Avos have to do it first? That's the concept. That's the idea. The idea is for a prophecy to take place, it concretizes through the action of the Navi. By the way, that's why the Chai Adam writes, the Simanim on Leil Rosh Hashanah, why you dip the apple in the honey. Of course, you don't make the bracha on the apple. You make the bracha on the date, on the Shiva Samina. But that's a different story. Why do you dip the apple in the honey? So he says the same idea. Hashem is decreeing we should have a good year. But unless we do a physical action to concretize it, it's more difficult for it to come to the world of reality. That's the concept of the siman. Says the Nesivos, there's a midah in Shamayim called shofar. And that's something that brings rachamim to Klal Yisrael. But what's going to bring it into the world of Metzius? What's going to bring it into the world of reality? When we physically blow the shofar, it brings down the midah in Shamayim of shofar. When we take the lulav and esrog, it brings down the spiritual hisayrus of lulav and esrog. We do a physical act, and that brings down the influence from Shamayim. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't understand. I understand you blow a shofar, it brings a midah of shofar. I understand you take a lulav and esrog, it brings a midah of lulav and esrog. But what's a machzas hashekel going to do? God, you have money in Shamayim. You have a midah called money. God has cash. Discover card, American Express.
Torah used the word cash.
So what exactly are we accomplishing by giving the machzas hashekel? So Hashem said, yeah, in Shamayim there's a shekel of eish. There's the machzas hashekel shel eish. When you give the machzas hashekel, it's ma'orer the machzas hashekel shel eish.
That's what he showed.
So Haman understood that there is a kayach of machzas hashekel. So Haman said, if that machzas hashekel, if that kayach could be harnessed for kedusha, I'm going to harness it for tumah. I'm going to bring it down to this world in tumah. So Haman pays 10,000 talents of silver to try to harness that koyach of machzas hashekel for the forces of tumah. You know how many midos there are in Shamayim, says the Nesivos? I'm just saying the words. I'm not telling you I'm an expert in exactly what this means. He says there are 10 midos in Shamayim. That's why Haman had 10 sons. How many levels of tumah are there? A total of 50. That's why Haman wants to hang Mordechai in an eitz gavaya chamishamama. He wants to harness all the koiches hatumah through the machzas hashekel, through his 10 sons, through the eitz chamishamama to the sides of tumah. So Ron Shalom says, sorry, we already took it all. We took everything through the machzas hashekel of donating to the Mishkan. You see, Haman was a smart guy. He figured that if by giving a machzas hashekel, you're able to build a Mishkan, a center point of kedusha, then if I give a machzas hashekel corresponding to every Jew, I could create tumah corresponding with that amount. Hashem said, sorry, we already preempted you. We already took it all. We gave the machzas hashekel first, and now we've completely harnessed it to the tzara kedusha. So what do we do with Haman? We take him and his 10 sons on an eitz gavaya chamishamama, and we cut off the tumah. That is how the Nesivos basically understands the episode of Purim and the inyan of Haman giving the machzas hashekel corresponding to Klal Yisrael. And then he says something, he adds a few details onto what we've said already. If you take a look, let's just look at a few lines in number 7. He says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the bottom in number 7. By the way, if anybody wants to get Maramakaimas for any of the Shiurim, you could email subara1836@gmail.com. You could have, if you miss a Shiur or any of the Shiurim, you could have...
Is that a gematria or something? Or?
I'm not sure. That's the guy who does it. Subara1836@gmail. So he says like this. Take a look. 4 lines from the bottom. God created one thing opposite the other. By the way, does anybody know where it says that?
Sefer Bereshit.
In Sefer Koheles, Parak Zayin, Pasuk Yadalit, it says, V'yoim toiva, hayeh v'toiv. V'yoim ra'ah, re'eh. Gam es zeh, lu'uma zeh, asa ha'loikim, al divras, shelo yimatzei ha'adam acharav me'uma. Says the Nesivos. Ki zeh lu'uma zeh asa ha'loikim. Ulekach amru nivna lanu ir, u'migdal ir k'neged Yerushalayim, migdal k'neged Sion. And he says even further, see, I skipped a line before, that not only that, there's certain parts of the earth that could be even more concentrated tumah. That's why you find the expression ervas haaretz. Ervas haaretz means that place is the real concentration of full tumah.
That's min hashamayim. That's something that's people.
No, that's created by man. The same way we needed a David to make Yerushalayim, to make the Makam HaMikdash, the Mitzrayim created Mitzrayim. They created the Ervas Haaretz. Okay? So now this brings us to a very interesting portion of the Shiur, and a very interesting question of Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. He says, nowadays, why is it that we don't really have so much kishuf? Right? Hey, now, how many of you ever walk down the street and you meet somebody who could really do real black magic, real witchcraft? You ever see any real shadim? Sometimes I do. You know, you're walking at night at 11:30, you see two guys walking at you. These guys are shadim, right? But anyway, you know, most of the time you don't really see shadim. What happened? In the Gemara's times, they're constantly seeing shadim, right? It's like every other thing is, you know, person shade, all kinds of dealings with shadim, and all the koichos hatuma. What happened to them? Where'd they go? Where'd they go? Why are they disappeared? Look at number 8. This is the Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky in Parshas Va'era. Al Dvar HaSheila. Madua bizmanenu chadlu hamechashvim. What happened to Kishuv today? Gam hashedim nelmo. There are no more demons. V'chein hadibukim. What happened to the dibuks, right? You read all these stories about people being possessed by the dibuk. What happened? No more. I mean, how often, you know, where's Yankel today? Oh, Yankel. I'm sorry to tell you, the other day, a dibuk took him over. Hopefully we'll get a tzaddik and he'll be back here in no time. Right? You don't really hear that too often. What happened? He says, where are all the disciplines of the, you know, what happened to them? Says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. He says, God created in the world in a way where there's a level and equal playing field. Because if there wasn't an equal playing field, we would not have free choice. It's true that if you don't want to see the truth, you'll never see it. But nevertheless, there has to be an equal playing field. That is why the Ramban says, even by Kriyas Yamsuf, which was such an open miracle, what did God do? Hashem had the Ruach Kadim blow and blow and blow very strongly to give Paro the opportunity to say, you know what? It was just a windy day. Why did Hashem do that? The answer is because Hashem, if He makes miracles, He gives ample and equal opportunity to say, you know what? It was just a windy day. V'lo alpines. Says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, Avok Shayu Neviim, when we used to have prophets, and the prophet could say, you better listen to me, otherwise, he would say, you see your car, all of a sudden your car would, you know, fly up to Shamayim and then come down. So when the Navi could give a sign, if there was no concept of Kishuf, then everyone would just listen to whatever the Navi would say. There would be no room for Bechira. So whenever there were Nevi'im, there was also Kishuf. And this way, when Yirmiyah tells us, you better improve, what do we do with Yirmiyah? We take him, we throw him in a pit, and we throw stones at him. And when Zechariah tells us, you guys better improve, what do we do to him? We stone him to death in the Beis HaMikdash on Yom Kippur. Why? But he's a Navi, he's making miracles. Kishav, this magic trick, that magic trick. There was always room for Bechira, right? We always think that, if only I would see a miracle, then I would definitely come on time to Shacharis. Then I wouldn't talk by Chazar Sashat. No. If there was miracles, then you just say it's Kishav, right? Like Eliyahu Hanavi says, Aneni, that the miracle should happen, and equally Aneni, that you shouldn't say it's Kishav, right? Aneni sheteret eish min hashamayim, v'oichla kamash v'mizbech, v'aneni shaloi toimar ma'asik shafim heim. Because as great as a miracle is, it is equally great to actually acknowledge that it's a miracle. Because when there are miracles, there is opportunity to deny it. So he says, he says like this, and he says, even though by Makas Kinam, Paro said, Etzva Lekimhi, right, the Chartumim, by Makas Kinam, they said, we can't do this, Etzva Lekim. You know what Paro said? Paro said, these Chartumim, they don't really know enough Kishuf. But I'm going to learn more Kishuf, and I'll understand that this is really not the Yad Hashem. Says Rabbi Yaakov in the next paragraph. Lefikach. Kozman, Shahaisa, Navua, Hayu Maifsim, Nasim Al Yidei Kshafim. If there's prophecy, there's witchcraft. And then, when prophecy stopped, Kishuf stopped. But you know what we still had? We still had something called a Baskal. So even though Kishuf stopped, because Nevuah stopped, but as long as there's a Baskal, you know what you have? You have Shadim. He says, Baskal, Hayogam came Koichos Na'alim Chetziam Ruchanim K'may Shadim. As long as there's a Baskal, there are still spiritual forces like Shadim. And when the Baskal stopped, at least you had Tzaddikim that can make miracles. Right? At least you have Tzaddikim that can make miracles. So as long as Tzaddikim could make miracles, you still have the forces of the black side. But nowadays, when there are no prophets, right? It's important to know that. There are no Nevi'im. And not only that, there's no Baskal. And not only that, there are no Balei Moifsim. You hear this thing? Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, who is he's saying there are no more Balei Moifes. Like we had a Shiur. Right? Rabbi Yaakov Hillel says, if somebody says they're performing a miracle, even if they perform a miracle, it's assumed it's coming from the Koiches HaTorah. Unless the person is an acknowledged Talmud Chacham. And even then he quotes the Derech Hashem, the Ramchal, who says even a Talmud Chacham could make a miracle unknowingly from the Koiches HaTorah. But nowadays, where there's no Balei Moifsim, Nasa HaKoil Rak Gashmias. All you have in this world is pure physicality. So you know why there are no Shadim? You know why there's no Kishuf? Because when the Kedusha goes down, the Tumah goes down. Why? Zeh le'uma zeh asa lekim. When you have they work in tandem, yes. There's always an equal playing field. When the Kedusha goes down, when you have no supernatural prophecy, and no supernatural Baskal, and no supernatural Moifsim, you have no Shadim, you have no Kishuf, and you have no And that is why Chazal say, Lo kam bi Yisrael kemoisha oid. But among the Goyim it was come. Who's that? Bilam. Why? Because per force. If there's a Moshe, there has to be a Bilam. Because otherwise there's no free choice. The fact that a Moshe exists means there's a Bilam who exists. Right?
What you're saying is it's just like in the laws of physics, of physical physics.
It's
going to be a spiritual.
There's the law of equilibrium. The law of spiritual equilibrium. If the kedusha descends, if the supernatural ruchnius descends, if there's no nevuah, if there's no baskal, then there's no tumah either. And if the tumah goes down, if there's no kishuf, there's no nevuah. It's equal. If there's a Moshe, there's a Bilam. If you had a Rav Moshe Feinstein, if you had a Chazon Ish, you had bad guys, very big bad guys also. Right? You had a Hitler. Yeah. You had a... And nowadays everything is...
mediocre.
Right? Like the Hasidim used to say, it used to be when it snowed, it snowed 10 feet, 20, right? Nowadays it doesn't really snow, doesn't really get hot, doesn't really get hot. Everything is... Then he says like this. Now we could explain the Rambam. The Rambam in the Pirush HaMishnayos says there's no such thing as Shadim. Famous Rambam. The Rambam says Shadim is make-believe. There's no such thing as any forces of impurity. There's no Koyach HaTumah. There are no Shadim. And the Mefarshim take the Rambam to task. In fact, the Gra, you know what the Gra says about the Rambam?
Is it or not?
That's the comment of the Rambam. The Rambam says, Kishuf, Shemais, Lachashim, Shadim, Kmeos, all these things are sheker.
Is that one of the reasons he was put in Chayrim? Is that one of the reasons?
What did the Gon say?
The Gra, well, listen to what the Gra said.
Yeah.
The Gra in the Bir HaGra in Yardea says, Avakfar Hiku Oisal Kadkadai. Says the Gra, the Mefarshim already hit the Rambam over the head. Shahari Matzino Harvey Maisias Begemara Pishema Sukshafim. There are many stories in the Gemara of Shemais, of Kishuf, of Shadim. So what's the Rambam going to do with that? Right? Everybody knows the Rambam was the great rationalist. He did not accept anything supernatural. What's he going to do with all the Gemaras in Shas? Says Rabbi Yaakov, Avada the Rambam is going to accept the fact there were Shadim, and there was Kishuf, and Shemos were influential. That's when you had Amoraim, who could say to a guy laying in his grave, time to get up now. time to wake up. When every Amoira had the power of Tchias HaMesim, there were Shadim, there was Kishuf, there were Shemos. But says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, right on the fourth line in the paragraph in Nira, in the times of the Gemara Shal where you had Amoram when you had Amoram and you came to the Amoira, right? When Rabbi Yitzchak ben Al-Yashiv's Talmud came to him and he said, Rebbe, I can't take it anymore. My wife's family, they're very rich and they're putting pressure on me. I can't keep up with them. So Rabbi Yitzchak ben Al-Yashiv said, no problem, they should become poor. And they became poor. And the next day he said, yeah, but Rebbe, now they're asking me for donations. So the Rebbe said, they should become rich again. And then he came to his Rebbe, he said, Rebbe, I don't know what to do. My wife does not look the same she did 20 years ago when I married her. So the Rebbe said, what's her name? Chana. Chana Tisyapi. Chana should be beautiful again. And the next minute, Chana was beautiful again. And then the next day he comes, Rebbe, but now she wants to buy new clothing. I can't afford it. I can't take it anymore. So Rebbe says, Tachzar Chana l'shachrirusa. She should be plain again. By the way, you learn a very big lesson from the Gemara. You always think things would be better.
Grass is greener.
Right? You always think things would be better. So you see from the Gemara, no. The way things are, that's the best they could be. But in any event, that's in the olden days when you had Amoram. They could change nature. You needed forces of Tumah. Why? Ki zeh leumas zeh asa elokim. V'im koyach HaKedusha b'toikvai, kamoi kein koyach HaTumah b'toikvai. When the Kedusha is in its full force, the Tumah is in its full force. Now think carefully what he's saying. He's talking about the supernatural. So when you had supernatural prophecy, supernatural baskal, you also had supernatural koychas hatumah. V'rak b'yameinu, but in our days, shegam koychas haruchanim nelmu v'namayu. You don't have Urim v'Tumim, you don't have Nisim, you don't have Nevuah. So therefore, by the goyim, by the koychas hatumah, it's also homogenized. It's very simple. Says Rabbi Yaakov, I remember when I was in Kelm. Okay, listen to this. In the Skar Kisho, used to be Kelm. Ra'isi, I saw that Rabbi Chanan Basman Zechzag Levracha wrote B'Shem HaChafetz Chaim that the famous story of the Dibuk that happened in the times of the Chafetz Chaim, that the Chafetz Chaim exercised, right? That would be the last instance of Dibuk, says Rabbi Chanan. Ki kachol shetiktan koyach haTorah v'aruchnias. As the koyach haTorah goes down, kein tiktan koyach haTumah. The koyach haTumah goes down. Says Rabbi Yaakov, this is his final comment, that it's possible that in some areas of the world where Jews live, charedim be'emunah, chadurim be'emunah, tamimim, where the koyach HaKedusha is on a very high level, who knows what kind of tumah you have there as well. Maybe there, taka, you have some shadim roaming around, right? So if somebody wanted to know, where are there shadim today? Not in San Francisco, right? That's not where the shadim are. Maybe somewhere in Bnei Brak, maybe in Meir Sharim. What?
Main Street.
Yeah. That where the koyach HaKedusha is strong, that's where you have koyach. You have also a very interesting Gemara on this concept of zelu umazeh asa leikim. A little bit different, but along the same lines. That we know Rav Nachman had a famous wife. What was Rav Nachman's wife's name? Yalta, right? Yalasa. Amrele Yalasa Rav Nachman. Yalasa said to Rav Nachman, Michti. He said, my dear husband, I have the following problem. Kol da'asar lan rachmana, shar lan kavase. Whatever God prohibited, He permitted likewise. In other words, if whatever is asar in the world, there is a permitted way of gaining that pleasure. For example,
but 1 minute, you have so many, you only have 7 kosher behemoths, and then you have so many thousands of non-kosher.
They all taste the same.
But they can't...
You'll see. Right? For example, asar lan dama, God prohibited blood. Shar lan kavda, but you could eat liver. Liver tastes like blood. The taste of liver, it's congealed blood. The question is even, by the way, how do you know you're allowed to eat liver? If the Torah says you're not allowed to eat blood, how do you know you're allowed to eat liver? There's no pasuk in Chumash that says you're allowed to eat liver. So some learn it out. It says about dam al ha'aretz tishbechenu kamayim that only blood that you could pour like water is aser, but blood that congeals like a liver is mutter. Aruch HaShulchan says, you know how you know you're allowed to eat liver? Because it says the kohanim are allowed to eat anything that's not burnt on the mizbeach, and the liver is not burnt on the mizbeach. So how could the kohen eat it? It's a lav in the Torah to eat blood. It must be the liver is mutter. But you're not to eat blood. But if you want to have the taste of blood, you eat liver. Nida, yeah, a woman who's a nida is tameh. Dam tayar. But after a woman gives birth, the blood that comes out is tar. It's not tameh blood. Midaraisa. Chel of behema, you want to eat fat? You can't eat of a behema, but chel of chaya you can eat. Chazer! You want to eat chazer? There's what are they called? Bako bits. Bakos, right? Or moicha de shibuta, or if you don't like bakos, you can have the brains of a shibuta fish. Girusa, you want to eat a gerusa? You can have lishna de chavra, a tongue of another fish. Eishes ish, you want to live with a married woman? Yeah. If a woman divorces her a husband divorces his wife while he's still alive, so that's the same tam. Eishes ach, which is also yivama. Kusis, a gaya, yifas tayar. So it says Yalas, husband, I want to eat basar b'chalav. I want to eat meat and milk. So we would say, you have too much time on your hands, right? But he says to her, she says to him, I want to eat meat and milk. Amar lahu, no problem. Take the udder, take the kchal, impale it, roast it, and the udder is milk and meat. In the udder, which is meat, is milk. Ask the Shlach HaKadosh. Yalasa is a chashva lady. What was she talking about? Dvarim betelim. This is nonsense. This is absolute nonsense. This gibberish. Everything which is mutter is aser. You want chazer? Eat the brains of a shibuta. You want to have blood? Eat what is this nonsense? But I want to eat milk and meat. Go get a life. You want to eat milk and meat. What is this nonsense? Cheeseburger. What is this? And it's bad enough she's wasting her time. Ravina and Ravashi have to waste our time to report this to us. We need to know about it. That's the kash of the shlach. That's exactly how he asked the question. He asked in Asara Ma'amoros, Maimer Gimel V'Dalet, Ois Kuf Yudzayin Kuf Yirchas. So he says like this. What does it mean you have to serve Hashem b'chol levavcha, with your Yetzer Tov and your Yetzer Hara? How do you serve Hashem with the Yetzer Hara? When a person refrains from treif, he shouldn't just say, treif is disgusting, I don't want to eat it. No. You should develop a desire for it and say, Hashem doesn't want me to eat it. So I'm serving Hashem not just with the Yetzer Tov by not eating it, I'm overcoming the Yetzer Hara with my desire to eat it, and I'm not eating it. So whenever the Torah says not to do something, you're supposed to develop the Yetzer Hara to do it. Okay, the Rambam in the Shemana Prakim says not by every situation, but in some situation you're supposed to develop the desire, that's the Yetzer Hara, and then you serve Hashem with the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer. Or let's say Hashem says, take the lulav and esrog. Develop a Yetzer Hara, you know what? Why should I take a lulav and esrog? I'd much rather be here in bed lying down. That's the Yetzer Hara. And then use the Yetzer Tov, say, but Hashem told me I'm going to jump out of bed and do it. So Yalasa says like this. You know why everything that's prohibited in this world, Hashem gave us a permitted way of doing it? Because if there's no permitted way to do it, you're never going to develop the desire to want to do it. If Hashem says don't eat pig, why would any Jew ever want to eat pig? It's disgusting.
Smells great.
With the 2 feet, with the apple in its mouth, it's disgusting. So you know what Hashem says? I'm giving you the moicha de shibuta. Taste the brain of this shibuta. You know how delicious it is? Once you have that, you're going to develop the cheshek for chazer. Hashem always, you want a gaya. Hashem gave you fast tayar. So now you have the cheshek for it. So now that you have the cheshek, you could serve Hashem both with the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. So Yalasa says, I want to serve Hashem not only by not eating the basar v'chalav. I want to develop a desire for basar v'chalav. This way when I don't eat it, I get more schar. So what does Rav Nachman say? Try the udder. That should do the trick. But this is also part of the concept of Zeh L'Uma Zeh Asa Elokim. Now, this is one final point. One final point. You look around the world today, you may not have kishuf, you may not have shedim, you may not have koiches atoma, a supernatural way. But I would venture to say, and probably most people would agree, the available tumah that's here today is much more alluring than ever in the history of the world.
Why do you say that?
Ma'yasa haben shelo yachta. I think that's true. I think
you're right. I just wonder why you said it. I think you're right.
I think Daya l'chakima baramiza. I think we all know that's the temptations that are available today, the tumah that there is today, is much greater than ever in history. Rabbeinu Narachaim HaKadosh says, in Mitzrayim we weren't able to reach the 50th level of tumah, otherwise we would never come out. But he says in the future, we will reach the 50th level of tumah, and we will be able to come out. So I think it's pretty safe to say that the tumah, maybe it's not supernatural, but the tumah of Gashmius that there is today is much more tempting and powerful than it ever was. But you could also make the case that if Zela Umazel Asalekim, if the Kayach HaTumah is much stronger today, the amount of Torah that's available today is also unheralded in history. Everything is available. Everything is available. The Shas, the entire Shas is available. Bavli, Yushalmi, even the secrets of the Torah, the Shiurim that are available, it's mind-boggling. It's really mind-boggling. And as the years pass by, there are a number of Svarim that are written, beautiful Svarim, that tie together. It's unbelievable. It's unreal. So, yes, on the one hand, the Kayach HaTumah today is tremendous, but the ability, the access of Torah today is also unheralded in history. And that's what the Archaim HaKadosh says, number 12. He says on the Pasuk in Parshas Kisavai, V'samachta b'chol hatoiv. You should rejoice with all the good, says Archaim, a beautiful Archaim HaKadosh. People say, I'm losing out so much. There's so much pleasure available in this world. You go out in the streets, there's so much pleasure available. Says Archaim HaKadosh, whatever pleasure is available in a prohibited fashion, you could get from the Torah. Any sensation that you could imagine, any desire you could imagine, by learning Torah, that sensation is available to you. Look what Archaim HaKadosh writes. Gam yirmoiz b'maimer b'chol hatoiv el haTorah. When it says v'samachta b'chol hatoiv refers to the Torah. Ka'armam zalek, Chazal say, ein toiv el haTorah. Shem hayu b'nei adam margishim. If people would feel and appreciate b'mesikos, the sweetness, v'arevos, and the pleasure, Toiv HaTorah, of the goodness of Torah, people would merely start to feel the sweetness of Torah, hayu mishtagim, they would become insane. Right? Like somebody who loves money. They can't think of anything else. That's all that's on their mind. Umislatim achareh, they would be so wildly pursuing Torah. V'lo yechashev be'einayim m'loi olam kesef v'zav l'ma'uma. And if once you begin to feel the sweetness of Torah, then the whole world of silver and gold would be nothing. Look what he says. 6 words that are earth-shattering. Look at this. Ki ha-Torah koileles kol ha-toivos sheba'im. Anything good in this world, any pleasure that you could imagine, you're not giving it up. You're not giving up anything. If you're able to delve into the Torah, the satisfaction, the happiness, the pleasure that could have been available elsewhere is available from the Torah. The trouble is that we don't always appreciate the Mesikos HaTorah. Why not? Right? The Archaim HaKadosh is saying that if we would just feel a little bit the sweetness of the Torah, everything in the world would be nothing compared to it. So the Vilna Gaon writes on the words, Shetagilenu b'sairasecha, on davening. The Gemara says that you don't have to develop a taste for the sweetness of Torah. Every Jew naturally enjoys Torah. The problem is, once you get used to other types of pleasures, you ruin your taste buds. Right? Somebody who eats certain types of foods, his taste buds are ruined. So we naturally appreciate the Torah. But the more other types of things we fill our minds with and we get used to, it doesn't allow us to fully appreciate the sweetness of Torah. So we ask Rebbeinu Shem, Shetagilenu b'Torasecha, get us accustomed to the Torah so that our taste for the Torah is not affected, is not transformed, is not ruined, and then naturally we'll revert back to appreciating the Torah. And zelu mazeh asa leikim, and this will help us conquer all the temptations of this world. Rabbi said,
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.